So Rhett, what was your compensator doing whenever you were shooting it, whenever the barrel wasn't basically all the way through?
Splintering the barricade.
And what did you just say though?
Putting pieces of wood in my hand.
Okay. Alright, today we're going to be talking about this rifle right here. It is a TRIARC AR, and in case you're wondering, Rhett is here as well. He's over here. Rhett, tell us what your gun is.
Yeah, so this is my gun. The TRIARC Systems, but it's Centrifuge Training branded. It's Will Petty's work gun that was spec'd out by him, but TRIARC puts it together and that kind of thing. So it's the 13.9 with the pin and welded Surefire War Comp on it. It's got Radian ambidextrous safety selector with a Radian ambidextrous charging handle. The front sights and the backup iron sights are Griffin Armament M2 flip-up iron sights, Magpul furniture, their own proprietary rail, and the light is a mod light, the long-bodied one with the PLH head with a mod button. Straight out of the gate, this rifle, if you're not military or law enforcement, is going to cost you a little bit over $2,000. Luckily for me, or unluckily for me, depending on your opinion, is I'm an LEO, so I got a discount. So it cost me almost $1,800 after taxes and all that kind of stuff. But I placed the order for this gun in October of 2020. So I didn't get it until September of 2021. So it was just a little bit over 11 months waiting for this gun. And I finally got it. Super stoked. Took it to the range and immediately had problems. So I like to shoot steel cased ammo. A lot of people, for whatever reason, wears your gun out quicker or whatever. I like to shoot steel cased ammo. It's cheaper and more economical.
Well, and you can replace your barrel with all the money you save.
I mean,
so who cares if it wears out your barrel faster?
And you can, over time, the money you save buying steel cased ammo, you can
buy like 5 barrels.
Yeah, you can afford to replace the parts if they go out on you.
And most of the people never shoot enough to actually where it's going to make a difference.
And most people don't shoot enough to make the difference. So I buy a steel case ammo. So I zeroed it with my duty ammo because I plan on having this rifle in my patrol car at work. It's going to be my work gun like it's intended to be.
So that's what they marketed it as, too.
Yeah, they marketed the gun as for patrol cops or SWAT cops or whatever to use on duty, pull it out, put an optic on it, put a light on it, and throw it in your patrol car. Well, zeroed it with my duty ammo. Pretty accurate. Wasn't necessarily as accurate as I would like. It's probably me, but I'm not going to blame the gun for that. 62 grain Remington ammo is what we carry on duty. So immediately had some feeding issues with steel case. So I was getting failed feeds, double feeds, failed extracts, and then I started getting stuck casings. So that was strange. And just something, stupid me, I didn't have any kind of rod to beat a stuck case out, so I had to cut my ram strip short. Took it home, I got my ram rod out, cleared it out, no big deal. I got the stuck case out. Next time I was like, you know what? I got some brass case ammo, took it back out to the range, make sure to have my ram rod with me in case I needed it. And started shooting it. Went through about a mag, was fine. I was using brass case ammo, so it was cycling it fine. No problems. Well, then I noticed the trigger started feeling funny. Like the trigger pull wasn't quite the same. It was just kind of weird. I don't know how to describe it. I was like, that's funny. So I stopped shooting, was looking it over. I didn't see anything wrong with it, like externally. I unloaded it, made it safe, cleared it out, and everything. Broke it open, was looking at it, didn't notice anything weird. Put it back together, started shooting it again. Same thing, trigger was funny. Stopped shooting it, unloaded it, made it clear, was looking at it, and I noticed the trigger pins were walking out. And I was like, huh, that's strange. And I'm not an AR-15 armorer. Like, I shoot guns. Blake likes to build guns and fix guns and fiddle with stuff. I don't really do that. I pick up guns, I load them, and I shoot them.
Yeah, I like to tinker.
I'm not really a tinkerer. So I asked him about it. I just texted him because he wasn't there.
Yeah, I was at work at the time.
And
you went without me.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, you're not.
You're right. So while I had the gun safe, unloaded, on a range, all that stuff. I pulled the trigger, and I cycled it to reset it, and it fired. It fired when I pulled it, and when I let it go, it fired again. And I was like, woo. And then I noticed that the trigger was actually sagging down sagging down further, and then I could actually see daylight through the trigger pins. So I pushed the trigger back up, put the pins back in it, where it functioned fine, and then it didn't have any problems. It was staying in there. So I took it home, and then when Blake got off work, I took it over there, and he looked at it. He cracked it open. The first thing he noticed, he was like, well, your trigger springs aren't in the right spot. They're not installed properly.
All right, so what I noticed whenever I first saw it is, if you see inside here, I actually replaced the hammer spring right here. And then for those of you who don't know, this coil right here and right up here, that's the hammer spring. And you see these two little arms right up against the edge. Actually, let me grab a flashlight. This thing's probably going to be way too bright, but it's kind of helpful. All right, so you can see the yellow spring down in there. That's not the one that I replaced. It's the silver one right there, the hammer spring. So what I noticed was on those is, instead of this arm here and this arm here being where they are now, and that holds the trigger pin in place, because inside this trigger pin there's a groove on one side, and that spring arm fits inside the groove, and that prevents the pin from going left or right. And if you have a weaker hammer spring, then your pins are most likely going to walk on you. And I figured that's what was happening. But whenever I looked in here, this arm was actually on the other side of this other spring. Instead of being on the outside, it was on the inside, and then the trigger spring was on the outside. So there was nothing holding these pins in at all.
And this gun hadn't been run super hard.
Yeah, it hadn't been run at all.
I hadn't done a Sage Dynamics burn down on it.
Yeah.
Where I just ran hundreds of rounds through it. This gun had less than 100 rounds through it. And
there's no way for that hammer spring and everything to jump around like that. Like, right. It came from the factory that way. Yeah. The springs were installed where they're just smushed on the mill. And can that happen when you're installing stuff? Yeah, it can. But when you pay almost $2,000 for a rifle, the quality control should be able to put a hammer spring in correctly. Right. Like whoever installed this thing.
These guys allegedly build guns for a living.
Yeah. Like me in my shed with, my battery operated lantern to build stuff at night, like can do this correctly. Like, how did they not put that in right? So I was like, oh, okay, here's your problem. So I took it out, moved the two things back over, the little arms, moved it back over, and it, these don't come out anymore. I was like, okay, well, there's your problem. That fixed that. So next, now I had that fixed. I was like, okay, that's your main issue. It's not functioning, or not cycling steel case. So I was like, it's not that big of a deal. We can tinker with it with buffer weights and everything and see if we can get that fixed. So I gave him a carbine buffer because it comes with an H1 buffer. So I gave him a carbine buffer, which is lighter, obviously, so it'll help cycle lighter ammo better. That's not a permanent or the correct fix, but that's an easy fix. It's more of a Band-Aid. Most likely, I figured it was a port size and the barrel, because every port size is slightly different. Some guns are fine-tuned for certain things, some aren't. This gun, to me, was more fine-tuned. So I was like, okay, we'll put a lighter buffer in there. We'll see if that works. And then that solved your problems.
Mostly, yeah.
For, like, what, about half a mag? Something like that?
So it would cycle I would say probably the majority of the time after we changed the buffer weight out.
Okay.
But then I was still getting the occasional fail to feeds, and then I kept getting stuck casings.
Yeah.
So the stuck casings didn't stop, which is like, I can fix a fail to feed. It's a tap rack.
Yeah.
But a stuck casing takes you out of the fight.
Yeah, because you would try racking it and the extractor would not grab.
And it would lock my gun up sometimes. Yeah. It would lock, I would have to mortar it to get it open.
Okay. So once he told me that, I was like, okay, well that sounds like you're having extraction issues because the case is getting stuck in there. And steel case, yeah, it can get grimy, whatever, but he hadn't fired enough rounds to get it to have that problem yet. And people who think lacquer coated or whatever steel case like gums up, that's not true. It's just dirty. It doesn't seal the chamber well, so you get some backblast that comes around it because brass, it seals the chamber better to where crud doesn't come back inside the chamber as much. With steel case, it doesn't expand as quickly. Gas comes back, so it gets dirtier, and that's what causes it. But when your gun's pretty clean, that is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. So when he told me that, I was like, okay, well, maybe something's wrong with your extractor. Maybe it's weak. And I was like, well, let me see because we're going out to the range that Saturday. Yeah. So I was like, let me just fiddle with it whenever we get out there. So I went out there and I was like, let's see, because I'd just come from a Sons of Liberty Gun Works AR Armorers course. It was a 2-day course, and so I just learned a whole bunch of stuff, and I was all excited, like, oh yeah, I know everything now, So I went to that and I was like, let me check your extractor, because he talked about different extractor springs, and there's 5 coil, extra power springs, and then what to look for, what your extractor should have, if it has a spring, a little rubber insert, then an O-ring, what all it needs. And so the first thing I noticed was whenever I took his bolt out, is I took the extractor is actually missing right now, but if you can move your extractor with your finger easily like this and push it off to the side without it hurting a lot, your extractor spring's too weak. So as soon as I moved it, I was like, ho, I could move it pretty much without really any effort. I mean, pushing down on it, it did not hurt. And on any good extractor, if the spring's not worn out or if it's fresh, it should be uncomfortable to push that thing out of the way. Same thing with your plunger. If you can push your plunger in easily, which this one you can't, then you need to replace that spring in there. But so when I saw that, I was like, okay, well, something's up with your extractor spring itself, and which obviously you can see goes right here. But I'll show you on his what it was. So they advertise on their website. Let's see if it'll focus here. Now I'll have to do this. So they advertise a 5-coil not recoil spring, but extractor spring, which is an extra power spring. And when you do that, that's fine. You can see it has a little insert. Hopefully you can see there's a little rubber insert in the middle of that thing, which is correct. And with this 5-coil spring, which is also correct, it appears you don't need the O-ring on it. Now that's with the Springco extra power springs. They do come with these in case you need it, but whenever I was able to move it that easily, I was like, there's either one, this is not the 5-coil spring, it's a standard one, or 2, it's either used or something, I don't know, but it was way too light. So I was like, well, I have an extra one of these little O-rings. So I put that on there, just like that, how it's supposed to, put it back together, and voila, it solved the majority of your extraction issues with steel case. You still get them, like,
I still, even after playing with all this and fixing the extractor spring and putting the O-ring on it and everything, I was still getting stuck casings every magazine we fired.
Yeah.
I was still getting at least one stuck casing per magazine we fired through the gun.
Yeah, but that fixed probably, what, 90% of them?
Yeah, probably about 90-95% of it, yeah.
So that solved that issue for the most part. But I mean, the extractor spring, either they put a used one in there or it needed I don't know if that's even a 5-coil spring. Because a 5-coil spring, this is a Springco 5-coil spring on this. So I'll hold them side by side. Right, if you want to put your hand back behind here. Yeah, there we go. So you can see his is on the right now and mine's on the left. So the 5-coil spring from Springco is this one right here. This is the one that came in here. It looks like it's the same black coating and everything, but it's a little bit shorter. So I don't know if it's just a little bit more compressed or what, but a brand new one looks exactly like this. So either they gave him a used one or it's not a 5-coil, I don't know. But either way, this spring was too weak and they should have figured that out from the factory whenever they put it in.
Yeah.
So putting that O-ring on there fixed that issue, because adding the O-ring adds just a little bit more, I guess, pressure, for lack of a better word. So it has a little insert on the inside now. The rubber one has a rubber O-ring now, and it has a spring that's fine with all this stuff. So it worked just fine after that. So one last thing we'll say beforehand. So I figure now, since it feeds steel 90-95% reliably, that's, I mean, relatively acceptable, I guess. It should still cycle, because all the guns that I've built, literally in my shed, all run steel case just fine.
I mean, you can put steel case through an Anderson.
Yeah, and it'll eat it.
And they'll run them.
Now, some people will say, oh, well, this gun is just, more fine-tuned for brass, so it's smoother recoil, blah, blah. Sure, fine, whatever, but whenever you start dealing with fine-tuned guns, you start losing reliability, which I guess you can see with this one. But also, the gas port size on this might be a little small. That might be the reason for it, which will make it smoother recoiling. Like, that is a thing. Or the chamber is just a little tight. Those are the only two things I can think of, is the why it wouldn't cycle anymore. But next we'll move on to when we went to a rifle class and how it performed during that.
Alright, so a couple days ago, or 3 days ago, I guess, at this point, we went to a Chris Costa Carbine Element Theory 1 class. It was semi-local to us. And during the class, I was running that rifle, as you see it right there, with PMC bronze brass cased ammo, 55 grain full metal jacket stuff, just range ammo. Right out of the gate, I started having, this is probably probably just over 100 round mark through this gun at this point.
Yeah, we just basically sighted in everything.
Yeah, it had been sighted in, had a couple magazines ran through it. It wasn't a very high round count. So started this class, and before the middle of the first day, I was making comments to the people on the either side of the firing line to me that I was getting light primer strikes. Like I got one, and I was like, huh, that's weird. You know, but you get that sometimes. Like sometimes you just get a bad round, or
Bad
every
primer,
now,
or hard
bad primer,
Yeah.
too hard of primer, or whatever. So I, fixed it, whatever, kept going through the class, and I was like, you know what, that happens. And I got another one. I was like, okay, I guess that happens sometimes. And so I fixed it, moved on. I started getting another one, and then I got another one, and then I got another one.
And I didn't know about this until he came back whenever we went back to reload. And he's like, this thing.
I was literally getting one or two a magazine worth of ammo. Like maybe even 2 or 3 per magazine worth of ammo going through this class.
Alright, so I looked at it again and noticed, because whenever he said he's having light primer strikes, I was like, either your hammer spring is weak, or it's worn out, or something, maybe it broke, something like that. And so this is the hammer spring it came with. It's the red one, you can see. And I'm 99% sure it's the JP Enterprise Enhanced Spring or whatever, because the trigger spring on this gun is yellow, and the hammer spring is red. And so I looked up to see what this was specifically, and I saw that's pretty much what it was. And they advertised this rifle specifically on their website as having a mil-spec trigger, and trigger group, trigger spring, whatever. So I was like, well, that's weird that they put this in there. Because I asked Red, I was like, did you upgrade the thing? And he's like, no, I didn't put anything extra in there. So they put this enhanced spring in there for both of them, which, I mean, I guess fine. Maybe they just had those laying around. They were out of mil-spec ones. But as soon as I saw this in there, I was like, okay, well, whenever I released the hammer, pulled it back, released the hammer, pulled it back, it felt very light compared to a standard mil-spec one. And I had Rhett do it too. He's like, oh yeah, that's definitely lighter. And so having a lighter trigger, I guess, in there was nice for shooting. But I was like, that's what's causing your light primer strikes. So I had a spare Sons of Liberty Gunworks intercommercial here, mil-spec hammer spring that I had actually just bought because I went to the class. I was like, oh, well, I have Chinesium hammer springs, so I need to buy some nice ones. So I had those, and I was like, well, Rhett needs it more than I do right now. So I replaced this hammer spring with the Sons of Liberty Gunworks, just standard mil-spec hammer spring. And voila. It's
100% fixed.
100% fixed. Did not have a single light primer strike the rest of the class, did you?
Nope. Not a single problem out of the gun after that.
So day 1, light primer strikes, about 3 a mag.
Yep.
Day 2 and 3, 0 light primer strikes. So lesson to y'all, if you have a JP Enterprise enhanced trigger spring, 1, stop buying stuff that makes your trigger super light. Just get better at your gun.
And so the way Chris had us do it, we zeroed the beginning of the first day, and we zeroed the beginning of the second day too. So the first day I had the JP thing in it. The second day when I zeroed again, I had a completely mil-spec trigger.
Yeah.
And first of all, the difference is negligible in my opinion. I couldn't hardly tell the difference.
Yeah, the trigger pull is almost the same.
And my accuracy didn't suffer. Like I could probably tell a little bit difference. Like I was probably like, so the first day I could cover my groups at 50 yards with a quarter.
Yeah.
And the second day I probably would have needed a $50.
Yeah. So it was like a quarter of an inch.
It's not that big of a deal. It's not that much difference. If you can't hit a man-sized target at a 50 or 100 meters with a mil-spec trigger, you should probably sell your guns. So,
Yeah. So one thing he was sacrificing for a lighter trigger, and it was lighter. Like whenever we first pulled the trigger on it, I was like, oh wow, that's a nice trigger on there, and not realizing it had lighter springs in there, and that's how they get a nice trigger. But I think it's weird that they put these in the gun when it was advertised as mil-spec, because mil-spec is more reliable than these are.
And they probably thought, if anything, we're getting bonus, like they're giving me a bonus, like they're giving me an upgrade without charging me extra.
Yeah.
But they're making my gun not reliable.
Not as reliable. Yeah. So.
And a gun that I had was literally carrying on duty.
Yeah.
Like I had it in my rack in my car.
Yeah.
So
I thought, again, I don't know, maybe if TRIARC's watching this, like, why did you put these in there? Like, was your employee not paying attention that day? Were you out of mil-spec stuff, so you put these in instead? Like, I don't know. That's strange to me. But it also makes me wonder about the extractor spring as well. Like, the quality control that you're paying for when you're paying for something like this should be, like, perfect. When I'm catching this stuff, but they're not, like, that's bad.
You're not just paying for, like, the gun. You're paying for the materials, you're paying for the gun, you're paying for the Centrifuge Training logo on the side, which I don't have anything against Centrifuge Training. I have nothing against William Petty at all. He's a very well-respected, well-known name, but it's kind of like,
Well,
it's just disappointing, is what it is.
Yeah, well, and I don't think this reflects him. I think this
this
reflects whoever built this or put it together with these components.
In my opinion, it doesn't reflect bad upon Will Pay or Centrifuge Training at all. If anything, it reflects bad upon TRIARC.
Yeah, for
letting this gun come out the door.
Yeah, like either one, they should have asked you, hey, is it okay if we use these triggers? Like if they said, hey, by the way, you're going to have an enhanced, spring, but just know it's not as, you might have light primer strikes with hard ammo, or with hard primers. Okay, that's fine. But something else we just now noticed actually when we were making, when we were talking about making this video, is if you notice on here, you see these little like teeth. Those should not be there. That's rough cut. And you can see up here it's a little bit smoother. And let me show you what, and this is, I don't remember if this is a Palmetto State Armory nitride bolt or if it's a Brownells, but you can see how smooth that is. Like it's still got a little bit of a lip there, but it's a very smooth cut, very precise. And you can see around here, there's a, let's see if it'll pick that up. That's better. So you can see on here, very nice cut. You can see how the little dip or ramp, I don't know for lack of better words right there. You see that little ramp, it's nice and smooth. On this one, again, you can see how rough that cut is. And it's almost serrated, and it shouldn't be that way. And if you look here, that side's fine. If you look on that, look how terrible that's cut. I don't know if this will show up really well on camera. Now let me get this. So, yeah, that shows up a little bit better. So you can see how rough that cutting is. And I assume that's just from the tooling that they use to cut out that hole. I don't know what else would cause that, because a couple, 1,500 rounds should not cause damage on that. So to me, that just means that whoever made this bolt, the tooling probably needed to be replaced, and they didn't replace it. So that's another quality, and I bring that up. It's still functional, still works fine.
Right.
That doesn't affect anything whatsoever. Nothing's rubbing. The extractor's not rubbing against anything in here. That's not an issue. But it just kind of goes to show that when you're paying $2,000 for a rifle, I expect better quality control than that.
So the way the gun sits right now, I love it. Like, it's great. I love the gun. It's supremely accurate. It's more accurate than me. The fit and finish is great. I like the handguard. It's nice and lightweight. The handguard is really sturdy. The barrel seems really well done. The welding, where they welded the war comp onto the end of it, looks perfect. It's all fine, but it just, at the beginning before, and we didn't send it back. I didn't contact TRIARC about this at all because we just fixed it. Like I needed it fixed. They were easy fixes. We fixed it, and now it runs fine. Right now, I have no problems carrying the gun on duty or on a call out or whatever, but I can't imagine I could have gone to a call or gone to a SWAT call out and been in a hostage situation or something, and I raised the gun to save this hostage,
and you just get a click.
And I get a click because I had a light primer strike because they put a JP Enterprises trigger, a hammer spring in my gun. Yeah. And then that hostage gets killed. Yeah. Or I get killed.
Or you get killed because now you have to tap rack and you don't have time to tap rack because they're like, oh, gun. Yeah. So yeah, and that's, I think, my complaint, your complaint, I don't know, it's the quality control that should have gone into this didn't.
And I'm not gonna give a pass because it's not acceptable in my opinion. I know they don't care what I think at all, but when you pay that much money and wait that long, and this is your first impression of it, and I've never bought anything from TRIARC before, and I probably won't ever again. Yeah. I've looked at their other guns. I've looked at their longer barreled guns. I've looked at their 2011s. They make a 2011 that looks pretty cool, but I'm not ever going to give them any more money because of this. Yeah. So, I don't know.
So, let me ask you this. If someone else was to ask you, hey, should I buy a TRIARC, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that they should buy... There's plenty of other perfectly reputable companies out there. Get a BCM... Get a Daniel Defense. If you really wanted something high end, there's a Noveski, there's LWRC, there's
Sons of Liberty Gunworks.
There's, like I said, BCM or Daniel Defense or something like that. There's really, this gun is great as it is now. After it's been fixed, it's fantastic. I don't think there's anything about this gun that makes it better than any of those brands we just listed.
Yeah. Well, and I think if they had caught those things in their QC, this wouldn't be an issue whatsoever. No. But with all those companies, that's really what you're paying for. You're paying for fit and finish. You're paying for QC. So,
and I'm sure that if I had contacted TRIARC about this, they'd have been like, "Oh, that's our bad," and sent it back to them, and they fixed it and everything, and it would have been fine.
But then you're without a gun for another how many, how long?
And it took me 11 months to get the gun from the beginning. No telling how long it would have taken me to ship it back, and then to wait for them to fix it, and then them ship it back to me. It could have been another 2 or 3 months. You never know.
You don't know. Well, and I'll be like, if this was a PSA gun, or if this was a home build or a Brownell, one of those like lower budget or even mid tier rifles, I don't think I would be mad. I'd be like, oh well, that's obnoxious, but it's a cheap gun. I understand. Kind of what
you get.
Yeah, you don't get good quality control. You don't necessarily get the perfect fit and finish with lower.
If this gun had cost me
parts.
If this gun had cost me $800.
Yeah,
I'd have been like, oh,
just change out a spring, not a big deal. Oh, it needs a stronger extractor. Yeah. Okay, that's not a big deal.
But once again, $1,800, 11 months.
Yeah.
So I think the key word for this review is going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
I'm not going to send the gun back or ask for a refund or sell it or anything like that, because it works fine now.
Yeah.
But it was just
you shouldn't have to fix your $2,000 gun.
No, it definitely knocked the wind out of my sails for sure.
All right. Anyways, hopefully y'all enjoyed this video. It's just kind of a rant. I don't know, maybe you're not here anymore, but this is more of kind of almost a podcast kind of listening to that, because we didn't have anything going on in front of you really. But hopefully you enjoyed this. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, anything like that, put them down in the comment below. Check out the Instagram, because I always forget to mention that there is an Instagram. Yeah. What is the Instagram page?
Portac556.
There you go. All right, so
just like the YouTube channel.
So go check that out. Again, give us,
as the kids say, popping.
Oh yeah, I'm too old. I don't know how that stuff works. So give us a like, subscribe to the channel if you like this kind of stuff. This is not really poor, but this is, I don't know, what would you qualify this as?
I honestly have no idea. Buyer beware, PSA.
Buyer beware. And it's funny because the PSA guns that were in that class actually worked just fine. They made it through the entire class except for one who they installed the hammer spring backwards.
Right.
So again, but it's PSA. What do you expect? I mean, it's $500 gun at most.
Right.
So again, but anyways, if you guys have any things you like this kind of stuff, let us know. We'll do some more rants. I don't know, but anyways, have a good one.